I run a company called Joost. When I was here 3 years ago, I was on my own. That team has slightly grown. We are most well known, I guess, for what we do in the WordPress world. We maintain a couple of plugins. The two most well known ones both have over 1 million users. In fact, our SEO plugin now has almost 4 million users. Which makes it probably one of the biggest software projects out there. I'm told by some of the statistics keepers who do statistics on how many sites run Drupal, how many sites run WordPress, etc., who also measure our plugins, that the only project that's bigger than us is WordPress. We have way more WordPress SEO installs than there are Drupal installs out there. So it's always fun to see those statistics. I also do consulting on the side. I'm very, very picky. So I only work with clients that I like. And especially on the politics side, I only work with companies that do not object to my somewhat left-leaning political agenda, which is why I work for The Guardian and refuse to move the Daily Mail to .com. The funny thing is, 3 years ago, I did a talk here talking about how you should be using Google as a reason of why you should be doing SEO. I'll be telling you the same today. There is no accessibility versus Google. I'll show this by highlighting some of the stuff that we've got in the Netherlands in the WebGitLang, our guidelines, and show you what Google is saying about those things. I'll show you these in Dutch because I didn't bother to translate them. But one of the more important guidelines is web pages should have titles that describe the subject or goal of the page. Well, if you look at a title in Google, this is what the title tag is. If you look in Google, you'll see that titles and descriptions are actually one of the first things that people see off your website. And we're not talking about just blind people, we're talking about everyone that reaches your website. This is one of the first things you'll see. So that title is very important and it should be descriptive. Google is a bit more concise than what it says about titles. It says it should be short and descriptive. This is, of course, very, very similar. Now, we have in our guidelines that are not perhaps in language so accessible themselves, some text about what the anchor text of a link should be. Google has written about that too, and they actually both say the same thing. The anchor text, and I'll take the Google description because it's actually better. Anchor text should signal to search engines and users alike. Google actually says this in their own text about it. What the goal of that link is and where it leads you. Now, 3 years ago, there were still many people that I would consider black hat SEOs. SEOs that use all sorts of techniques to make websites rank that do not necessarily help accessibility or help mankind. They would just add there to generate loads and loads and loads of pages and loads of bullshit to get ranked for more and more terms and things, so they get more traffic. In the last few years, Google has rolled out 2 updates, and has rolled out both those updates several times, called Panda and Penguin. I can only say I love those, because they've killed pretty much every site that purely relied on Google to make a profit. One of the things that will get you hit in Panda, for instance, very hard is if you've got too many banners on the top end of your website, you'll be degraded very, very easily. It's about usability and accessibility a whole lot more than it used to be. So it's no longer optional. I was saying this 3 years ago, and it's even more true today than it was 3 years ago. Accessibility is not optional. I'll show you some examples that make me go pretty mad about stuff I'm seeing happen. But I want you to know right now that I'll end on a high note, and I'm actually very confident. So, there's some things in the guidelines that make me very happy. The only thing that doesn't make me very happy is the level that they're required of. I've talked to several people about this over the past few years already. So the durability of a URL is only required in the AAA level, and that makes me a very sad man. Because I think that URLs should always stay the same, or at least be redirected. So, because I know that there are people in this room, I tried to find a website that the people who could actually do something about this are at least slightly responsible for it. So this one's for you, Claire. The Algemene Bestuursdienst, the common, there's no proper English translation for that. Yeah. They launched a new website literally yesterday, I think, or the day before. And they have a very important page on their website about how to report your site activities. So say you work for the government, you make a ton of money, but you also do some work on the side for some big corporation. You're supposed to tell and to report that so that they know about this and can judge you on it. They have a lovely page for that. As you can see, it's easily found when you type in the words that such a person would type in. Of course, now that they have a new website, what you get is a 404. And this makes me sad. What makes me even sadder is that when I search for that document, which is what they tell me to do, I find that they have a search result, as you can see in the bottom there, so I click on it, and it's a PDF. And there used to be this lovely HTML page that was like, had all the content and everything in it, and the PDF is grossly inaccessible. So I just go sad, because someone spent money on writing this page. And in a few months' time, someone will figure out, hey, we had that lovely page out there. It's gone. Oh, let's write a new one. This is throwing money down the drain in a very easy way, just by not keeping the content that you already have. And that makes me sad. There's some more examples. I don't know if there's anyone who works for the small community of Tallinn in the room. If not, you're probably lucky. So, Tallinn has a very peculiar URL if you search for it in Google. I ended up on cda.tallinn.nl instead of www.tallinn.nl because it's sort of broken on quite a few spots. I've actually seen quite a few systems where you could do this, where you could actually have all sorts of weird subdomains and link to them, and it would break just about everything. I have to admit, this is what they call a top tasks site in their publishing around it. Any top task site that has like 3 layers of navigation like this, I'm sorry, but go do your bloody homework. We're getting to the point where top tasks is a marketing gimmick more than it is truly what it's supposed to be. And that makes me angry. So don't do that. Don't buy any of that shit and just do it properly. One of the other things is an SEO problem that's actually very common, and that should be a top task problem as well. If you see the bottom 2 results here, you both see taxes and then the name of the community. One of those pages is about taxes for companies. The other one is about taxes for individuals. Which one should I click? And who wrote those descriptions? I own a company. Precario taxes? What the bloody hell is that? Why should that be in there? I mean, this is actually very important in getting people onto your site. This is SEO 101, getting your titles and descriptions right. And this should be a top tasks 101 thing as well. You should write these manually. Then, of course, I tried and loaded that website on my computer, and I realized that it's actually pretty slow to load. And this was when I was still in my office. And I have a 200 megabit fiber connection in my office. If a website is slow to load, it's your fault, not mine. So I went and ran this through Google PageSpeed, which is a tool that Google offers everyone to make websites faster. And it got a 42 out of 100 score. I would classify that as abysmal. It's actually one of the lowest scores I've seen in the last 6 months, and we review websites on a daily basis. To show you that it can be done a bit better, I'll actually give some kudos to Frank and team here, because Valk actually has a 90 out of 100 score and could pretty easily get to 95. All of this makes me sad, because I see that website, I see that template, I start looking at other new websites, and they're all the bloody same. Everyone's paying for the same crap with the same problems. So, this sort of happened. Now, nobody said this was easy, right? We actually said, no, it's not easy. But what we do have to remember is what this is all about. When I was reading the tweets, I saw a lot of people saying, like, okay, well, you shouldn't mention the wheelchair. No, you shouldn't mention the wheelchair. It doesn't really matter. You shouldn't mention the elderly and the slowly graying population. I'm getting gray hairs. Francisco's getting more gray hairs every time I see him too.
Thank you very much.
But this is not about those people. This is about everyone using a search box. Everyone using a search box will trying to find something on your site that they can't find because you've not done your accessibility stuff right, and stuff is hidden because of that. So in the end, this is not just about a few percentage of people that are hurt by not being able to read or see or whatever. It's purely about money. It's purely about how many calls you get to that office of people not being able to find stuff on your site. It's purely about a lot of those things, and actually, we now know that it can be done right. I used to run a small Dutch blog that some of you have read 3 years ago, a site called weblichtpijn.nl, where I reviewed new websites brought out by government institutions. 3 years ago, they were pretty abysmal. I have to say that when I was preparing this presentation, I found that in 3 years, a whole lot of good things have happened. I mean, this is probably one of the most shining examples, so I'll give that to Valk and some of the other communities doing the same thing. But it's very easy to be very critical. It's also now time to acknowledge that 3 years ago, all the stuff I've seen today, pages like this just didn't exist. I think, and he's in the room as well, the community the best was probably one of the first that actually did it right. I can only do this for you. It's a job well done. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that has happened, which doesn't mean that it's done yet. It's not finished. This is a continuing process. But at least we're now getting to the point where I'm not ashamed of what I'm seeing. Unfortunately, there are still some issues. I like top task sites. I like them a lot, and I like them especially because if you do them right, you do them in the language of the consumer, which means that you already do your SEO right because you're writing in the language that that person would use when he's searching too. Jerry McGovern actually does a lot of presentations and SEO conferences. Because, well, his story hasn't changed in the last 5 years. But he was right 5 years ago, he's still right, and still too few people are listening. But if you do this right, you have to think about all this. Now, what amuses me is that a password for one community is the same as in another. Luckily, Valk and Almelo have open sourced their texts, so you don't actually have to write those texts again, because it's bloody stupid for each community in Holland to be doing that all over again. So you need to share good solutions. Almelo this looks very similar to Valk in many ways, because it works, and because, and this is unfortunate for some people that work in government, you don't have to win design awards. And this is on camera, so sorry, colleagues at The Guardian, but there's some people in design at The Guardian that want to win design awards with their work, and that's the last thing I care about. So the only thing I care about is not the award, I care about the user satisfaction. So if there's one thing I go like this, I'm like, every time I look at all those websites, I see like, it's so easy to be a consultant here and make a lot of money. It's so easy to go around this room and a couple of others and proclaim that I've done something very new and innovative, and everyone will run with it, and you'll make tons of money by selling the same solution to 400 different communities. Please, for the love of God, put my colleagues out of work. Accessibility is not optional anymore, but sharing those solutions, the solutions you've created, should not be optional anymore either. I grow sick and tired of seeing 400 communities in Holland spend probably about as much as our government deficit each year on stupid IT solutions that they should have just built together. So I go like, when I see Valk and I see a few other examples, I go, oh, finally, someone's understanding. Our government has decided to make open standards required. Open source is still not required, which makes me mad. Because we're still at the point where we're allowing the government to pay, to have several sections of the government pay for the same amount of software and the same type of software every year, where they're all using the same stuff and they'll get billed for the same solution. So when someone changes something on DigiD, our government login system, and I see companies go like, yeah, we've got a new solution, and then sell it to 20 different communities for the same price. I go, no, please. Why are we doing this to ourselves? Why are we throwing our money away? So, I'd like to get into some questions and answers after that, but if I want you to bring one thing home, it's we're on the right way. We're doing the right thing. Let's now open source everything that we're doing and help our government close that deficit down by just making everything open source that's happening. And there are some companies showing the right examples, yet I still see government sites running on SharePoint or other solutions. And I don't hate Microsoft. I used to, but I don't anymore. But paying them for SharePoint for your website is a pretty poor way to spend my tax money. So, thank you for your attention. And I'll leave it at that.